An emergency evacuation is one of the most stressful and critical decisions an airline captain has to make in his entire career. As statistically, often more people are injured during the evacuation than had they stayed on the airplane. It's Thursday, the 3rd of August. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel. And yesterday, on the 2nd of August, Delta Airlines Flight 1437 had an emergency evacuation at Georgia's Atlanta airport in what appears to be a textbook evacuation, which resulted in only one passenger injury. Let's check it out. Starting first with the Aviation Safety Network, 2nd of August, a Boeing 757-200, November 676 Delta Lima, 190 occupants on board. Delta Airlines Flight 1437 was evacuated on the runway after landing at Atlanta Hartsfield International Airport. Apparently, several tires on the left main gear had burst/deflated during landing on runway 09 left, followed by an overheated landing gear which was contained by ARFF. According to FlightAware ADSB data, looks like they got the aircraft stopped on the runway 09 left and evacuated the aircraft on the runway. Here's a view of the tires after the event. The left main landing gear, it looks like at least one, possibly two of the tires' fuse plugs did melt and deflated the tires without exploding. More on that in a minute. Here's a still picture of the evacuation. All 4 slides deployed on the right side of the aircraft, none of the slides deployed on the left side of the aircraft. And I want to commend this pilot here, can't tell if this is the captain or the first officer, for wearing her hat. Hats have kind of become optional in the airline industry, and this is a good reason why it's a good idea to continue to wear your hat, because you can tell right away that she's one of the pilots, one of the crew members on board this aircraft, and she's in a position of authority to help guide everybody to a safe location. Here's another still showing the 2 right door flight attendants assisting with passengers as they come down the slide. And the real zipper ride, as I call it, the adventuresome one over wing exit, one of 4. I don't know if these folks are coming or going or decided to change their mind and say, that one looks a little too high and sketchy. I'm going to go back in and come down one of these other slides. I'm not sure, but not a lot of takers for the over wing slide exit, as we'll see in the video. And here we have a still of the left side of the aircraft showing no slides deployed, as this was the side where the problem was located with the left main landing gear. We also see ARFF in place, the green trucks here, and it was this truck here was able to quickly douse any fire from the left main landing gear right here. Here's a recording of the evacuation in progress, available on Twitter, assumed to be taken by one of the passengers. This is the 1 right door, the 2 right door, the 3 right over wing exit, and then there's a 4 right exit back here at the tail. Watch. I think she returns back to the cabin to pick another exit, and you'll see emergency responders dousing the left main wheel over here. Nice and orderly, no bags. Thank you, passengers, for listening to the crew, the flight attendants, and just bringing yourselves down the slide without all your bags, just like you were briefed in the pre-departure briefing. It's amazing how hot your bottom gets when you jump down these slides. When you're first hired at the airlines, you get a chance to ride one of these in the training facility, in the flight attendants training facility, and it's a hot seat ride down that short run of that slide. Folks at the bottom of the slide catching the passengers, helping them on their way. And there goes the fire crews cooling off that left main landing gear. And let's see. And she, 3 right. She decided to choose a different way down. Now let's take a listen to the live ATC, courtesy of liveatc.net, of the actual incident.
1437, is that correct?
Yes, sir. We did see smoke and fire coming off of one of your tires. We do have the emergency vehicles on the phone. We're sending them out now and looking for some off vehicles. Just hold the position. And your number one main gear is on fire.
Okay, thank you.
The 1437, the flames on the right main gear are on fire and visible from the tower. Would you like to enact any emergency procedures at this time?
We'll probably be evacuating off the right side of the aircraft.
1437, roger that. We will relay that information and make sure everyone remains clear. You could begin your evacuation procedures.
We have airbag deployed from aircraft. Asking permission for all units to enter onto 9 left.
And Fire Chief, proceed on runway 9 left. Our vehicles on Mike, proceed on runway 9 left.
ARP 8 on Mike, proceeding on runway 9 left.
Fire Chief to all units. Fire Chief to all units. ARP units coming from Station 40. Go ahead and protect egress. ARP 7, ARP 8. Go ahead and protect egress on front of plane. All other units coming in, we're going to go ahead and start rounding up everybody so we can get a count and hold everybody to the grassy area. All units hold everybody to the grassy area.
Okay, let's break this down a little bit. The second half of that audio was all with the ARFF. Everybody is up on the tower frequency, the one frequency, so nobody has to change frequencies. So it starts out with Tower talking to the crew, notifying them that the tower has noticed that there is a problem. First she calls it the number 1 gear, which is correct. Then Tower accidentally called it the right gear. Remember, there are no cameras in the aircraft where the crew can see what's going on with the landing gear. So they're relying on outside sources to tell them what's going on with the landing gear.
It sounds like we blew a tire for 1437, is that correct?
Yes, sir. We did see smoke and fire coming off of one of your tires. We do have the emergency vehicles on the phone. We're sending them out now and looking for some off vehicles. Just hold the position. And your number 1 main gear is on fire.
Okay, thank you.
Number 1 main gear is on fire, number 1 being the left.
The 1437, the flames on the right main gear are on fire and visible from the tower.
The left main gear. This is where it gets confusing, and this is where the whole decision as to whether to evacuate or not becomes very critical. We'll talk more about landing gear fires here in a minute.
Would you like to enact any emergency procedures at this time?
We'll probably be evacuating off the right side of the aircraft.
1437, roger that. We will relay that information and make sure everyone remains clear. You could begin your evacuation procedures.
So the crew kind of gets talked into or influenced into doing an emergency evacuation from the tower controller herself. Again, it's up to the captain to make the ultimate decision. Remember, landing gears on these aircraft are designed, the wheels and brake assemblies are designed to catch fire and to be extinguished easily by ARFF once the aircraft is stopped on the aircraft. And the aircraft are designed such that this fire typically does not continue beyond the wheel well area. And as we learned back here in the old Boeing 777 certification video, these wheels, brakes, landing gear assemblies are designed to go to maximum temperature, catch on fire, the fuse plugs blow, and the aircraft come to a stop, and for 5 minutes before the fire crews can get there, and the fire not proceed beyond the landing gear.
Taxied carefully back to the stand. Several fire engines waited, counting the seconds until they could put out the flaming brakes and cool the wheels.
Extreme temperatures. This is a rejected takeoff, by the way, in this example.
Each tire had a fuse plug which melted at a certain temperature. Before the tires became so hot they exploded. All 12 wheels were destroyed at a cost of $750,000. But the plane didn't catch fire, and the brakes performed even better than expected. The test had put 9.7 million foot-pounds of energy into the brakes and shown that the plane could survive, almost intact.
There's the fuse plugs, blowing those tires out. So that was the rejected takeoff test of the Boeing 777, where they took the 777 up to takeoff decision speed, the maximum speed at which it could reject the takeoff at maximum gross weight, go ahead and reject the takeoff, apply max braking, and that's what they got out of the wheels. In the case of this Delta flight, this was a blown tire on landing. The point being that this was a landing gear fire caused by a blown tire that was quickly extinguished by ARFF, but nevertheless, it's the captain's decision and his prerogative to make the call. We recently reviewed the function of fuse plugs here on the Boeing 777. Remember, those fuse plugs are located on the inside of the rim, opposite of what's shown here.
Some of you were asking about fuse plugs. Fuse plugs are put in these tires so that when they heat up, they will, instead of exploding, they will deflate in a controlled fashion. A fuse plug is simply a Schrader valve with a dollop of solder-type material put in there, such that when that material heats up to a certain temperature, it melts, that valve opens and allows the tire to deflate before exploding. Especially if you have the wheel brakes overheated, particularly after a rejected takeoff.
So that's the function of fuse plugs. And of course, aviation tires on these airliners are normally filled with nitrogen, an inert gas, versus just air. Once you've made the decision to evacuate, you got to complete it. There's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube once you've initiated an emergency evacuation. And here's an outdated evacuation checklist for the 757. ATC advise, well, the crew was talking with ATC and they kind of talked him into doing the evacuation. Parking brake set, fuel control switches cut off. This checklist is very important that you do it in order. You got to get the engines shut down before you start tossing the passengers out the slide. Another point about this checklist is in training, you'll find this checklist is ran a little bit different than all the other emergency checklists in that it's a read, do, confirm sort of checklist. So the FO pulls out this red card. He reads the first part of the checklist, the action, ATC, and then he reads the response, advise. And then the captain does the task, advises ATC, and then he says, advised. Next step, FO says, parking brake, set. The captain sets the parking brake and confirms, set. And you say that good and loud, sound off like you got a pair, because you're making a record for the cockpit voice recorder. You're telling everybody that's going to be investigating this, because there will be an investigation anytime there's an emergency evacuation, and so you need the fact that you've done the evacuation checklist correctly on record on the cockpit voice recorder. The next step, pressurization outflow valves open. That makes sure there's no positive or negative pressure on the cabin so that the doors will open easily. Evacuation announced. Now you announce the evacuation, and they've got very specific verbiage for that. Engine and APU fire handles override and pull. Illuminated fire handles rotate. That makes sure that you put the extinguisher into any fires if there is a fire in one of the engines or APU. Sliding windows, escape ropes as required. Another point I want to make about this particular evacuation, which makes it kind of a textbook evacuation, is that you're blown half of the slides on the aircraft. Remember, this is part of the certification process for airliners, that they have to be able to evacuate all the passengers in the aircraft in a certain amount of time using only half of the slides available, because chances are you're going to have a fire on one side of the aircraft that's going to prevent you from using the slides on the affected side of the aircraft. So the aircraft are certified to be evacuated using only half of the slides. So again, dealing with an emergency evacuation is one of the most stressful things an airline captain and airline crew can possibly do. And if you read the fine print regarding emergency evacuation, there's a paragraph on judgment. In a non-normal situation, the captain must decide whether or not to initiate an evacuation based on the available information. What are you going to do now, Captain? The captain must balance the hazard of an evacuation against the hazard of remaining on board. Considerations. Consider the following. The most hazardous event is a fire or smoke within the aircraft cabin or cargo compartment. Smoke or flames in the engines, APU, or wheel well assemblies will normally burn out quickly and not endanger the cabin. You make the call. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. As frequently this content is demonetized, this Twitter feed may be picked up by programs like Storyful and get a copyright strike. Thanks for your support. See you here.